Magic is found in every room where people connect over a shared purpose. In this weekly podcast, Luke, Hannah, and Chris explore the role of purpose, courage, mindset, and culture in every leader's quest for transformational performance.
Hey, welcome to the Magic in the Room podcast. I am Luke Freeman.
I'm Hannah Brodderud.
And I'm Chris Province, and welcome to episode 50 of Magic in the Room. It's not just any other episode, so I think that's reason to celebrate, right?
50.
You guys remember when we first started doing this, it said after 150 episodes, you will no longer suck. So we are 1/3 of the way to not being terrible.
Sweet.
Congratulations.
Congrats, guys.
We've done it.
And for all of you out there, for everyone out there that's hung with us and has been along for the ride, we sure appreciate you guys. And it's why we do it. It's what makes it worthwhile. And just appreciate being able to do this week after week. So thank you. And so Banner Day, 50th episode, worthy of some meaningful recognition, right, Hannah?
Yep.
So we'll get started. Today, we're going to continue with our EQ series and talk about collaborating, as a discipline that's required by leaders to, move things forward, whatever that may be. But first, it wouldn't be our podcast if we didn't start with the question of the day. And I want to learn a little bit more about you guys. And my question of the day is, tell me about a time or something that when you saw it, like that first time you saw something that inspired awe in you.
Yeah, good question. I mean, the first thing that popped into my mind is a trip that I did. So I was in Peru, and we were doing leadership training at a youth program that was doing camp and after school adventure education and leadership training with students. And so did that for a week, 2 weeks. And then I was like, I'm in Peru. Like, I want to stay. I want to see the Andes. I want to do something cool. And so I did what's called the Santa Cruz Trek. And it took me to the highest elevation that I've ever hiked at in a part of the Andes called the Cordillera Blanca. And you get up to a point called Punta Union, and it is 15,500 feet, give or take a little bit, I believe. And that's about 1,500 feet higher than I've been in the U.S. And just the scale of the mountains, there was almost no one on the trail. Oftentimes it's kind of a guided trek. We were there off season, so not for the best weather, but had some really beautiful days and some snow and cold and wet days too. But the scale of big mountains and being in a place where, you had to take a Kombi bus for multiple hours through a pass just to get to the trailhead, was pretty amazing. So hiked past guinea pig farms and saw some condors, and it was awe-inspiring for sure.
Of course, I was also going to pick a mountain ascent, but I have not been to Peru, so and your peak was higher than mine. So you win, yes. I guess.
Success.
I think for me, there's been a lot of really awe-inspiring moments in nature for me, and I live here in Montana, the Mountain States, and I get to, on a regular basis, just see incredible, awe-inspiring views. But I think the one that popped into my head was the first and only time I went to the top of a 14er in Colorado. So it was not one of the hardest ones, but it was definitely, one of the most challenging physical experiences I've done in terms of just literally experiencing all 4 seasons in one day, starting out at, like 6 in the morning, drove for about an hour to get to the trailhead. And then I think we started out around 7 a.m. and it was freezing cold. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't bring enough clothes. And none of us had like trekking poles or, we were just a bunch of like basically tourists. And I felt, as the Norwegian in the bunch, I should have known better, how to prepare. But anyway, we started out and it was pretty chilly early in the morning, and we started ascending, and then it got warmer and warmer. And, soon we were hiking in tank tops, and I was like, oh, this is really warm. Like, I was totally fine. And then we see this like line where it had snowed. And so there's literally like a snow line. And so we get up, where it gets really high, and now we're hiking in snow, and we have all our gear back on, and, we make it all the way to the top, and we're standing at the top, and we're drinking some beers and celebrating, and then we're looking out, and we see this like cloud in the distance, and it moves towards us like really fast. And I'm like, oh, it seems like there's some weather coming, let's go. And we started just like racing back down the mountain, but before we even got off the top, it was snowing. Like, it was on top of us so quickly, and it was snowing, and it snowed the whole way down, until we got back to the whatever elevation was summertime climate. And then we got almost all the way down. There was like this flat hike to get to the parking lot, and the biggest thunderstorm just like hit. And this was like 1 or 2 in the afternoon by now. And so they're like, and there were people going up the mountain then, but they're like, those people are crazy. Like, because this happens every day, you have to finish before like 1 or 2, or you're going to be struck by lightning on the mountain. So we were just running and running to get to the parking lot before it really started raining hard. But that was definitely, in terms of just experiencing all of the forces of nature in one morning, pretty awe-inspiring. Not to mention, obviously, the view itself and the scale of the mountains and being at that altitude. But all the weather.
But did you finish the beers before you came down?
Yes, we did finish the beers. And then it snowed.
Right. There was no abuse. Okay.
Yeah, because
just
you have to get that weight closer to your center of gravity.
Yeah.
So you are more efficient in carrying it down. The only way to do that is to drink.
Everybody knows that.
Yep.
Right. Everybody knows that.
Okay, Chris, how about you? Awe-inspiring sight.
Well, and there's definitely the like-mindedness. Like, I mean, I didn't see a mountain until I was 18 years old. Vacations were to Kansas City or Dallas. So I spent all my vacations in flat land. But I will not use that as my story today. My awe-inspiring story for today, my answer to today's question, is I'm going to say the first time I saw a college campus. Like, the first time I went to Stillwater and saw Oklahoma State University, it struck something. Like, to just, and I probably would have connected to any campus on earth that I went to first. But I just so happened to go to that one first. And to think that there was something of this scale that brought people together to all do the same things. Like, that was awesome. And yeah, I was hooked. But I mean, I think it seems a little mundane. Like, probably anybody that's ever went to college or attended a training could tell you a story about that. But I just remember seeing everybody walking around in this totally false environment where everyone's the same age, doing the same things. And like, never in my life would I ever have that experience again. Like, you get to create this petri dish of similarity and community. And it's just wild. What I took away from that, and I don't know, that's what inspired awe in me. And I think there's probably 40 things that we could name that inspire awe. But in asking the question, I think I'm just trying to encourage not just us, but everyone to like take those inventories of things every day that inspire that sense of awe and wonder. And I think it's one of those things that elevates our gratitude. When we can see those things, especially in a time, when things aren't always going as planned or we don't do things like we used to do, then recalling those things or keeping our eyes sharp to notice those things in our everyday, by elevating that gratitude, it gives us more resilience.
I thought of one that we experienced together. Do you remember? So we were on site with a client on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington, and we were staying in this little motel on the water's edge, and there's a little creek running up next to the unit that we were in, and the salmon were running. And this was like a tiny little trickle of water, but big fish were just like, it was full of them. They were splashing their way up. And so, of course, me being the fool that I am sometimes, like I kind of climbed down the bank, and I'm wearing, dress clothes and everything. But I was able to grab a salmon, 3 feet long, like big, and pull it out of the creek. Yeah. And like, to me, that was awe-inspiring. I didn't grow up in the Pacific Northwest, and you hear about Salmon Run and all of this, but it was like, this is real. Like, we're in this magical place where magical things like this happen, and you can reach into a stream and pull a big giant fish out. That's just amazing.
Yeah, that is definitely in my library of awe-inspiring things. In fact, I just told that story this morning.
No.
So, yeah, I
Seriously.
promise. If I'm lying, I'm dying. Because like we went fishing this last weekend, Landon and I did, and this guy's like, "Man, I'll swap you a Chinook run for a striper trip." And I'm like, "Get your airline ticket and let's go," And then I was telling the story about when we were there on that Chinook run, and we pulled those salmon out of I'll call it a ditch. It didn't look much like a creek, right? It was inches deep. It's crazy. It is awe-inspiring to see how those things navigate to where they're going, and nothing will keep them from it. Like, they will get there or they will die. And I think there's something to be learned from salmon. But no, and then we got to go back, and we were there during the king salmon run. You remember that, Luke? And got to see him use the salmon ladders and all that. It's just, yeah, that's definitely in my library as well. But it's just, I think training our eyes to know when we're in those moments and just kind of take it in, and because you just never know when the next one will be, and just all good stuff.
Well, it sounds like we need to do some collaborating out there soon on some project.
Spoiler alert. Yeah. Collaborating.
Collaboration is really what is required in order to enable the team around us to act. That's a huge piece of it. So if we're going to be leaders that are transformational and not transactional, then being able to collaborate with a team and keeping that top of mind is definitely something we're required to bring to the table. But Luke, can you open us up a little bit and just like, why is it important? Or maybe what does collaboration, like what should it be producing?
Yeah. So the way that I think about collaboration and why it's important is we as individuals are really constrained in any situation. We're constrained with our experiences that we have in life up to that point. We're constrained with the strengths and weaknesses that we have as an individual. But a group is much less constrained. And for me as a leader, the more I can pull the knowledge and wisdom and collective, experience out of the group, the more successful I can be in any given challenge scenario. And that takes collaboration, right? It takes creating a space where people can bring the best of themselves and attack a problem and try and create a solution. And so that's kind of my big picture philosophical, like how I view it. But really practically, collaboration produces better output and decisions. Is just measurably better, right? If we collaborate well, the solutions are better. It can save time. We don't have to fail and learn, go through those iterative cycles if someone else can be a collaborator that brings some of those experiences with us. It also increases our agility. We're not, like I said, constrained to, well, this is how I've done it before. There might be one outlier in that group who has really navigated a similar situation, and we can pull that outlier's experience and leverage it as a team to everyone be more agile and get where we're going faster. Ownership. If the group and the different stakeholders in the group have that psychological ownership of the problem that comes through the act of collaborating, right? I get my voice out there. We create something together. All of a sudden, I feel like I own it. And I have this intrinsic motivation to own the solution, to move forward. And then we're a social animal, right? The bonds between us matter. The bonds between us, the connection between us influences our performance. And so if we take a collaborative approach that really respects and honors and not just that, but even adds kind of glue to those connection points relationally between us, it makes a difference. People are more loyal, they're more satisfied, and can feel really fulfilled with the solutions that we create when we collaborate.
It's interesting what you say, Luke, about the social, that we're social creatures and social animals, and the human brain, more than any other, animal brain, has evolved for social connection and collaboration and cooperation, right? And one of the reasons our brains are so large compared with other species is that so much of our brain power is dedicated to processing social information. In fact, it's the default for the brain. So when they put people in MRI scanners and they give them different tasks, right? So they look at what parts of the brain lights up with different types of cognitive tasks. It was kind of discovered on accident when they were in between tasks and they weren't working on anything in particular and they were just sort of resting. All the parts of the brain that had to do with processing social connections and social information were lighting up like crazy. So when we're not thinking about something, our brain's default is to work out our relationships, right? And so collaboration is a really big part of how we work together to achieve great things. And part of that is, our brains are just wired for connecting with others. So I think, for me, that is really key to collaboration is relationship. And that's really at the heart of it. So collaborating well means building good relationships.
Yeah, and for any folks that are believers in the service profit chain, right? How do we engage in any relationship? It's through participation. So when we bring people to the table, when we create the space for the conversation to exist, keep in mind, like, that's a form of recognition in and of itself, right? Like, we're getting that quality time to have the conversation about things that are going to impact this team. So we are then, as a leader, we're looked at as a steward of the environment, and we're seen as being more trustworthy. We're seen as valuing relationships, and then giving people the opportunity to shape their own existence, which is all very powerful. And that's where you get engaged employees given discretionary effort. You have to create this space. But then once we're in the space, here's something I'm hugely concerned with. Once we're in the space, it becomes about building the collective conscious and the collective perspective. Like, what is our perspective on this task, project, or challenge that's put in front of this team? And Luke, like, you know, I just admire your facilitation skills. I think you are wonderful in a room, like drawing out ideas and emerging conversation. So as we're collaborating and as we're building perspectives, can you give us like 2 or 3 just kind of facilitation tips or tricks? And how do we pull out of this team what we need to know in order to create the right picture or perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the first word that comes to my mind is this idea of building shared mental models. And all that facilitation is at its core is reflecting upon doing. So we do something and then we reflect upon it to learn, right? And we all know reflection is the key to learning, right? So it really is this art of saying, we're going to take these breaks, we're going to, between the things that we do day in and day out, and reflect on them so that we can learn. Where that comes into ownership and collaboration is if we do that in a group setting, we can, in that learning and in that reflection time, create some shared understanding of the world. So if you, Hannah, Chris, and I, the 3 of us, were to all go fishing together, we'll use that since we're talking about fish today, right? And we go fishing and none of us catch anything. I might, and we're in 3 different boats, right? I might go away thinking, oh, the weather wasn't right. And Chris might go away from his fishing trip thinking, well, I didn't have the right lures for the type of fish. And Hannah might come away from it and say, I didn't have the right, I wasn't in the right spot in the lake. It was too crowded where I wanted to go and I wasn't able to get there. But chances are, if we all got together afterwards and talked through our experience, we would start to see some themes and some trends, and we would probably get really closer to the why none of us had caught anything. And we would create a shared mental model, a shared understanding of the story of what had happened that day. And we would go forward with some shared strategy on what we would do different next time. And so chances are we wouldn't all leave with convinced of those same 3 stories. We might all say, you know what, Chris, you're right. Like you went by that other boat that was catching stuff and he said, oh, they're all on woolly boogers today. Right. And so we all, well, none of us tried woolly boogers. Okay. That was it. Right. We would have left with that understanding. And that's what facilitation is. It's helping people create that shared narrative and shared mental model that not only creates better solutions, it also builds those social bonds. I mean, for better or worse, we are, like I said, attuned to the groups that we're in. We're social creatures. We want to be part of an in-group, and we want that in-group to be defined in such a way that we know who's outside of it as well. And if we have those shared mental models, they become an indicator of the in-group that we're in.
Yeah, and that's perfect, because I think a lot of times, and let's apply that to business just momentarily, or team performance. It's really about taking the time to say, what is our current state? And not just keep working or not just keep practicing. Like, where are we as an enterprise? Where are we as a team? What is our skill level? What have we learned from the last 6 months? What have we learned from the last 6 years? How effective are we at doing what we're supposed to be doing? What is our level of performance? Where are we lacking? Where are we strong? How do we leverage these things going forward? But at the end of the day, you have to create the space. And the number one thing I see organizations and leaders not creating this space to really understand current state, because we're too busy practicing and doing the things that aren't producing for us at a level we need them to produce at. So just calling a timeout and getting that shared understanding is huge.
Yeah, just a real life example of that, just to make it real. So was working with a business this last week, and we were looking at compensation for someone and trying to design their comp and benefits plan. And through the process, I became aware that this person's direct supervisor was going to be compensated at twice the number of this person on their team. And, I was kind of talking to someone else about it. And I said, yeah, I mean, if I were them in that system, I would be fighting for just as much compensation as I could get, even though I knew that it was twice as much as this team member that I had. And like any child could tell you that's not fair, that getting one promotion shouldn't double your pay over someone else, right? So it's not fair. It's not how it should be. I think that's pretty straightforward and pretty easy. But the fact that no one in that organization is able to have a conversation about, let's look at our pay equity right now. Are we doing the right thing? And do I have a say in pay equity between me and my boss or someone on my team that reports to me? The fact that I don't have a say means that I'm going to compete to transact as big a number as possible, because I can't change the system. So I'm just going to propagate it, right? But imagine if there was a conversation that included everyone, that empowered them to say, what is fair? There would be less inequity. It would be more equitable, and people would take more ownership of the decision that was made at the end. And so when we say collaboration makes a difference, it does. It gets better outcomes. Like this, in this example, more equity, better outcome. And it gives people an anchor into that community, right? Just getting to have the conversation would anchor a team member into that community at a deeper level while they got better outcomes.
It's great, man. That's an awesome, real life example. And a lot of the work that we do is around facilitating and really being a part of a team and collaborating the conversations to emerge core challenges so we can start to address those. But let's peel back the curtain a little bit, Hannah, and what are some of the tactics we can use to ensure collaboration in that space? Once we have the space created, what are some things we can do within it?
The big one, and I alluded to earlier, at the heart of collaboration is relationship, and at the heart of relationship is trust, right? So it starts with creating an environment of trust and building trust. And I think about just even collaborating with the two of you guys. So we've known each other for a long time. We work together, collaborate on, client strategy and program deliverables and things like that. And then we collaborate together on this podcast. And so over time, we have a lot of interaction and we build up a level of trust that I think really enables us to show up and, play off each other in a really meaningful and collaborative way. Like when we show up at this podcast, in case you guys hadn't figured it out yet, listeners, this is not a super scripted thing that we do, right? We kind of get together and we decide on a topic, sometimes right before we record, and we have a little bit of banter and we throw some ideas around and then we just have a conversation. But because we have that level of trust, I know what I can count on Chris for in those conversations. Chris knows what he can count on Luke for and on me for. It works really seamlessly because we have a trust in each other, first of all, as people that have each other's backs and that support each other. And then we have a level of trust in each other's skill sets, right? And the different ways that we can be counted on to show up. So I think that's a really key element of collaboration. And then, Luke, you talked a little bit about allowing people to be heard and having a shared mental model, shared collective experience, but that comes from, individual voices being heard and allowing individual voices to be heard. And that's been a little bit of a journey for me in collaborative situations of getting really intentional about asking for input from the quiet people in the group, right? Because I'm someone who tends to, if I have something to say, I'll just say it. So, we often assume that others will do as we do. But yeah, like really seeking out the minority viewpoints, inviting input from team members that maybe aren't as talkative, right? So we hear the nuance or the different perspectives. So yeah, those are a couple things. There's a lot of other tactics as well.
I would be remiss if I didn't bring a little bit of Lieutenant Colonel Doug Woodard into this conversation. And, Doug's a colleague of ours, and he does a lot of communications work within our team. And, his idea is like, know why you're having the meeting. Like, be able to describe in distinct terms what it is you're going to accomplish, and again, who should be there, what viewpoints do you need, how are you going to create all the perspective. So I really like that idea. He calls it a 7-minute drill, that thing we do where we frame up the meeting in a, basically do the layout of the meeting, know the objective, know who the parties are, and like try to over prepare so that the collaboration can be really effective. He's excellent at it. I'm trying to get better at it, but I really like that approach, being crystal clear of the purpose of the dialogue. And then also, I think there's some things we can do within the space that can foster collaboration. One of my favorite things to do is take out all the tables or try to get all the seats, in a circle. But if I can get everyone away from like hiding behind that table, like it's their whoopee or their little security blanket, like if I can remove that shield, then I think it opens up the conversation. I think it puts us in a different mental state. If we're in a learning environment, like setting up in a U shape, like the shape and the seating configuration absolutely has impact on the feel of the meeting. I think about ops meetings where we have more of that classroom layout where everyone's facing the front, and the operational leaders it just feels so much more transactional than when we're sitting in a U giving departmental reports and, what's coming up for us this coming week. Totally different feels in those environments. So, think about why is the meeting happening? Think about the physical space, and then go in and continue to foster those relationships, emerge the hard conversations, and move the things that are on your plate from A to B. And I think this is the part where we wish everyone well and happy collaborating. But let's get some final thoughts here, Luke.
As a facilitator of collaboration, I think one of the hardest things is making space for everyone. And so that's my takeaway is, you're doing it when everyone has been able to have a voice and everyone has a space at the table, whether that's the person who is quieter or who sits over in the corner or doesn't turn their camera on in a virtual meeting or whatever it is, or whether it's that business unit that everyone kind of makes fun of and you don't invite any representatives from them to come over and be a part of the strategic conversation. If you want true innovation and true collaboration to happen, like those voices have to be a part of it. And somebody has to take the leadership mantle and put it on and say, why isn't, Chris here? Or why isn't accounting here? Or whatever that is. And, for better or worse, like we need their voice. And we need them to be in the in group with us, building shared mental models and forging a path forward. So that's my takeaway. I think it's a quick little litmus test for yourself as a leader. If you've just gotten fed up with people and kind of written them off, you need to rethink that.
Sometimes it can feel easier to just do it yourself because it's faster. But if you want to do it right, and if you want to do it well, collaborate. I love this, the quote, this African proverb, which was on the syllabus of my first Odine class, the psychology of leadership. And it just has stuck with me ever since grad school was, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. And that's really, I see that now that I'm in a running group and my long runs on Saturdays, I go with a group and it doesn't feel like I went that far. It wasn't that hard because I had the support of the group and the social connection and so I do think both figuratively and literally we can go further when we go with others. So when we can collaborate and, we work together, we can accomplish more than each of us can individually.
Yeah, and I think my parting shot would be around who we invite and how many people we invite to our in-group, or how many people we bring under the tent with us, so to speak. The people that I trust, that's the in-group, and I want everybody to be there. I want all the voices, I want all the perspective. And I want to force an environment where if somebody's in the out-group, they're choosing to be in the out-group. That frames future decisions that I have to make as a leader. It frames how I allocate resource. It frames who I trust to do other things. So the bigger in-group that I can create and the more inclusive I can be in who I bring to the table, then the clearer picture I have of that path forward. So, inclusive communication models, inclusive collaborative sessions, such a big win for leaders. It's you showing support for the people around you, and is a huge contributor to high performing teams and leadership effectiveness. So that's my takeaway. Get you a big tent, invite everybody you can. But thank you guys. And for anybody listening, this is the work that we love doing. We love highly inclusive, highly intentional communication models. We love emerging difficult conversations around performance and effectiveness and how teams can move from where they are to where they want to be. So you can reach out on any of our social channels, LinkedIn, our website, purposeandperformancegroup.com. We are not hard to find, but mainly thank you guys for listening. Hannah, Luke, thank you guys for dialing in and being with us here today. And we'll see you soon.
Always great collaborating with the two of you.
Yep. We'll see you next time.